Good evening, welcome everybody. I'm just going to start with a very quick introduction, and then we'll get the show on the road. We're now in the middle of the parshas of Yosef HaTzadik, and Yosef HaTzadik is held up as the role model for being in challenging circumstances, for being, so to speak, away from the home base, and still maintaining, oneself and one's standards, etc. I wanted to be masber that with a little story, and I think it's very relevant to us. Ever since the end of the Tkufas Chazal, when Smicha was Nisvatel and there was no more Smicha in Klal Yisrael, so how exactly to decide who could be a Rav and who was considered a Musmach became like a big shayla, and every community had their own standards, how they would establish it. In the Yakisha community, there was something they would call someone Mereinu. After a certain point, when you'd matriculate to a certain level, you'd be labeled Mereinu. Now there was a rule based on a Gemara in Sanhedrin that a single person, someone who wasn't married, would never be called the title Mereinu. You weren't ready for that title yet. Now at Reb Kveger's Tanoim, his first chasana, Reb Kveger was 14 years old. He was getting married to a woman in Glickl Bas something. We still have some of the documents. And by the Tanoim, the Rav who was writing it wrote Mereinu Rav Akiva Eger in the Tanoim. And other people sitting at the table protested, and they said, Hayatachon, the long-standing minig over here is we don't write Mereinu on someone who's not married yet. To which the Rav who was writing the Tanoim said, I'm not writing Mereinu, and Mereinu tzich von zich allein. I'm not labeling Reb Kveger with Mereinu. He is a Mereinu. It says it for itself. Now, I think that's what Yosef HaTzadik was. Yosef HaTzadik was Mereinu tzich von zich allein. He was able to be as far out from the base, as separate, as disconnected from the Makar where he was being yoinik from where he came from, and still able to maintain his standards to the highest level. And I think that's the patent, that's the matara of this whole get-together that we do once a month, to strengthen each other, that we could be wherever we are, as far as we are, as far out as we are, as disconnected as we are, and still be Mereinu Zech von Zech Alein, staying on top of it. Now, going right on the theme of Yosef HaTzadik, so Yosef was hu ha-shalit, hu ha-mashbir, and the Rishonim point out, it was a chiddush that someone who was a shalit was also the mashbir, someone who was the leader was also the person distributing, food and sustenance to people. So I think tonight we have the particular privilege of having someone who fits the category of hu ha-shalit, hu ha-mashbir. Talmud Chacham and a Rav par excellence, and also someone who understands very much the technical and pratiistic details of everyone's life, and it should be very enlightening for all of us.
Thank you very much. As was mentioned, we're coming together for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is that we can each be mechazik each other. As was mentioned, the nisyonis that are out in the world are very large. There are many nisyonis, there are difficult nisyonis, and the truth is, speaking for myself, as somebody who has the schus of not having to face these nisyonis on a daily basis, it's sometimes difficult to sit here and to try to speak to people who are dealing with the Yetzer Hara on a day in, day out basis. And there's a Maisa with the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim lost a child at the age of 2. And the Chafetz Chaim said during the Shiva, Halavai as mein Kind soll ne shemen für mir in der Olam ha'emes. Sometimes I think you look at an olam, it's going to come the olam ha'emes. What's going to be? You're going to have many balabatim who are oimid b'nisayin in the olam ha'emes. It's all in front of you. And sometimes I daven halavai chzol nishemen from the olam and the olam ha'emes, that all the nisyonis that people face, and many people are oimid in these nisyonis, so it feels almost wrong to get up and to speak in front of such an olam. Afal Pikein, when you're asked and you have an opportunity to have a schus in such a zach, Pashat, you can't turn it down. So for selfish reasons, I'm here, and I asked olam mechila before I begin. There's a moedik Chovos Halavavos in Shara Yichud HaMaisa in Parakeh, in which the Chovos Halavavos is discussing the many different tactics that the Yetzer Hara sometimes uses to bring a person down. And he discusses the idea that he may challenge, the Yetzer Hara may try to challenge a person on Schai Vaynish, he may try to challenge a person's belief in Divrei Chazal, in Olam Haba, in Tchiyas HaMesim, in all kinds of ways the Yetzer Hara will attack a person. And after he brings all this, he says like this: After the Yetzer Hara tried and he gave up. And it could be today, this is like not our Nisyayna so much, we're not such deep philosophical thinkers. So the Yetzer Hara has another technique. He's going to try to make us lazy in doing avodas Hashem. And he's going to try hard to get us tarud in this world. Meichel, mishta, food, drink, malbush, clothing, merkov, riding a car, all these kind of ideas. I'm going to read just 3 more lines because I wouldn't be able to say it in the way he says it. So you'll start off, you listen to him. I have to have what to eat. A person can't manage without food. The next step is he'll make it look beautiful and tafel to mezainis. And we're going to start loving simcha and tainug. We are going to be jealous of officers. What's going to happen is we're going to look at officers. We're going to look at people. We're going to look at kings. People who have whatever they want. The king of Syria was just taken down. They broke into his palace. They saw his car collection. Right? It looked like a parking lot. Right? So every person has a sagas of what he's going to try to reach. And he goes on. The pshat is, he is going to, the Yetzer Hara is going to get a person to focus every action to be able, he says, that the Hamoin Am should be mekana him and the Sarim should be misrago with him. Meaning, this person's entire mahos is going to turn where he's focused on one thing and one thing only. To have an image of somebody that a regular person looks at as someone special, and that he could rub shoulders with the Sarim. He can be a Besser Mensch. And he says his entire being is going to be looking and trying to reach one thing. He says in the way he talks, in the way he walks, in the way he thinks. There's one goal. Says the Chovos Halavavos. You know what the purpose of the Yetzer Hara doing this is? If a person is focused, if a person's entire focus is to reach a certain status in life, ultimately what's going to happen is that's going to take over his life, and it's ultimately going to lead to a lack of focus in his avodas Hashem. And when we stop and we think about what the Chovos Halavavos is telling us, this is something that is so relevant to every one of us. Every person knows that if you want to succeed in business, the first thing you need is a business plan. You need a plan of where you're going, where you're trying to get your business to, how you're going to get it there. Someone who runs an organization needs a plan. Do we have a mission? In order for a person to succeed in life, there has to be a plan. Says the Chovos HaLevavos, when a Yetzer Hara gets a person on a path, that his mission statement, that his goal in life is to hit a certain status, it's all encompassing. And you know what he succeeded in? He succeeded that when it comes to Avodas Hashem, when it comes to things that are important, ultimately there is no plan. Because the entire plan focuses around one thing and one thing only. And that's to reach a certain status. Ad kan divrei Chovos HaLevavos, and if this was true in the time of the Chovos HaLevavos, it's so much more true today. And what this really opens up is a very simple question that we have to ask ourselves. We all have to make a living. We're all out in the world. Many of us work very hard to make a living. Many of us have a plan where we see ourselves today, where we see ourselves in 5 years, where we see ourselves in 10 years. But the question is that plan so all-encompassing that when it comes to our ruchnius, there is no plan? We don't have a she'ifa. We don't have a place where we're going. When it comes to ruchnius, we float. Says the Chovos HaLevavos, this is all part of the Yetzer Hara's plan. The Yetzer Hara, by having us focus, by having us wake up in the morning with goals and aspirations that have to do with Olam Hazeh, that in turn allows us to stay focused on that and to turn the blind eye to what's most important. And he goes on to say that the way you conquer this Yetzer Hara is by accepting the fact that for my bread, I'll be torud, for my basic necessities, I'll be torud, and anything more than that, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it to me, I'll take it, but if not, I'm not putting in the efforts because I have to put efforts into other things. Now, be'emes, this is something which is difficult. But l'chol ha'pachas, we have to at least have ruchniistic goals and ruchniistic aspirations. And besides ruchniistic goals and aspirations, we need to at least, our gashmius consists of two things: our business and our families. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, the aspirations we have for our business and our career, is that the aspirations we have in raising our family? How much effort, how much thought do we put in a day, a week, or even a month in regard to our families and ensuring that we're raising our children al pi derech haTorah and ensuring that we do what we need to do? We all know, we all feel that when it comes to our children, there's nothing that stops us. We have goals for our children. Whatever goals, unfortunately, we didn't get or reach for ourselves, we have for our children. We ensure that our children go to the best meisters. There are many people in this room who have already begun the tedious process of preparing their sons for Mesifta, sitting with them night after night, ensuring that they get into the best Mesifta that they could. And Ashrei Chalkechem. Aber ein Shayla. Am I zufrieden with my children's father? I have ruchniistic aspirations for my children. Am I okay with my children's father? My children's father is going to have a tremendous hashpah on them. Things that he thinks are important, they will think is important. And did we ever stop to think the image The Mahalach HaChaim that I have, the Shabbos that I run, is the Shabbos that my children grow up with. Am I okay with that? Together with the Yeshiva Ketana, the Mesifta, the high school, and the seminary, and the Beis Medrash. Says the Chayvus Halvavis, this is all part of the Yetzer Hara's plan, that we shouldn't stop, think, and ask that question. Many of us, perhaps all of us, spent many years in yeshiva. There was a certain ben Torah that we cultivated. We go out to work, some of us more, some of us less. There are things that fall away. But for our children's sake, are we more concerned about our image when we walk into the office? Or are we more concerned about the image that our children will see when we get home? There's a balance. What do we consider as more important? There's a machla, something that's creeping into Lakewood further and further. I'd rather have a hat, I'd rather have a jacket. But mincha during the week, it's hard. I'm married. If we ever allow our children to see us not wearing a hat, not wearing a jacket, what's the message that we're sending our children? Do as I say, not as I do. You learned in yeshiva, you're ben Torah. But the truth is, it's even more than that. We don't think along these lines. You have a younger man who goes out to work. He spent 10 years in yeshiva, X amount of years in kollel. He worked to cultivate being a ben Torah. His kids aren't there. He walks into shul without a hat and jacket. You know what that says? All that effort and all that time I put in, it's gone. I lost it. And if for nothing else, if a person would have she'ifas for ruchnius, why is he not embarrassed to make that statement in public in front of at least 9 other men that I let it go? We're not embarrassed to do that. The answer, unfortunately, is that's not where my she'ifas are today. It's not what I'm proud of. It's not where I'm trying to go, and it's not where I'm trying to grow. And if that's the case, so big deal. So I don't have a hat and jacket. But if we understand, if we're people that are looking to grow, and yes, there are times, despite looking to grow, people are put in situations, and we sometimes lose certain things. But then we're embarrassed. We're not going to make statements that say that we're not on the same madrega we once were. But unfortunately, our she'ifas sometimes are in other places. And memela, because of that, we don't have the sensitivities even. And this is something, if there's something that we want to work on, it's having goals and having aspirations. Goals and aspirations don't mean we always have to succeed. Very often people have business goals and they don't get to the first year and they don't get to the second year. But there's a place where they're heading and there's an effort and a thought process into where they want to go. And if we can incorporate that into our ruchniistic lives, into our chinuch, if we stop and we think, if I do A, my child will fataiche it to mean what? We'll lose the cheshik to do it. It doesn't feel so good anymore. That's what the Yetzer Hara doesn't allow us to see and to think. The same holds true. We talk about nisyonis in the workplace. As I mentioned, the nisyonis in the workplace are real. People are faced with nisyonis. Many of you work in offices. There are men, there are women. There are goyim whose morals and beliefs are so far removed from a ben Torah, from a ben Aliyah. And sometimes we feel hopeless. Where do we start? What's the Eitzah? How do we attack this? The answer, Kimedumani, is the same thing. It requires thought. It requires a mahalach. Shalom Shadron said over a Vaad, we say in Psukkah de Zimra, Loi begvus hasus yachbots, v'loi b'shoike ish yurtze, roitze Hashem es yireya v'sam yacham l'chazdoi. Fekiv Shalom Shadron, I needed David HaMelech to tell me, Loi begvus hasus yachbots, that Hashem doesn't like, doesn't want the gvura of the sus, v'loi b'shoike ish yurtze. This is a psagoysa chiddush we have to say every day in Psukkah de Zimra by davening. Fekiv Shalom Shadron, what is a gevurus hasutz? He says when people fight on horses, so the way they would fight is, the rider gets on the horse, he ties his legs above his knees to the horse goes out to war and just starts going in all directions. The rider who's attached, as long as he has strong thighs, he can stay on, and they go to fight. Says Reb Shalom Shvadron, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want a melchemes hayetzer with a gvurus hasus. You first go out to war, and then you start fighting like a meshuggah, you're holding on. People who have the Yireh Shamayim, people who realize, to quote what he said, they think about the nisyonis of their vacation before they go on vacation, not after they're there already, and then start realizing that they have nisyonis. Kol shekain in a workplace environment. When a person maintains a tzura of an erlich yid, when a person walks into an office with an understanding and a goal to keep his kedusha intact, it starts before he walks in. Had a chavusa who I learned with for many years, who was a manager of a warehouse. As you can imagine, the guy who should work in a warehouse could sometimes leave what to be desired. He had it worked out that any time a guy used a nivel peh when he was around, they apologized. He never said a word, but there was a presence that he had that goyim understood that you don't say certain things when he's here. And the same way, every guy in our office understands when they start telling you about piercings in the back of their tongue that you're not interested. We have to have a presence in an office that I'm above this. I don't want to hear about your personal life. I don't want to hear about your jokes. I'm nice, I'm respectful, but I'm above this. And every Yid has an opportunity, has an ability to be able to shtel such a tzur in his office. But it has to start, and it has to start from the beginning. And Rabbi Sai, it's a little bit late. We missed it for this year. When a person goes to a holiday party and lets down his guard for 2 hours, the message and the vibes that he sends his co-workers is besides the Yerida B'Shas Maisa, but the Nisyonis that he put in motion is something that he could light from for a whole year. If we want to keep our Ehrlichkeit, if we want to keep away our Nisyonis, it's that surah, that same tzura that we want to bring home to our children. When we're busy with our ruchnius, when we're focused on our ruchnius, it's that tzura that could be in the office. Doesn't mean that you have to snub people out. Chas v'shalom, that's not what we're saying. But there's a certain understanding that this person is on a certain level. Had a person that I was close to there was an event for nursing homes, and they had a secretary in South Philadelphia I'll leave the Olam's imagination to whose Enikal, Shem Chama Yaf, she was. But Al Kopanim, they went to this event, and it was an overnight. And the person didn't stay overnight. She came back to the office, and she said, I don't understand. From Yidden, flirt with other women. I thought religious people don't do that. I know you guys for 10 years. Every person in this room has an ability that the employees in their office should be able to say such a zach. But it's a choice that we have to make. And the truth is, this Yetzer Hara, for lacking to focus, is not only when it comes to our ruchnius, when it comes to our gashmius as well. Baruch Hashem, we're busy people. There's a lot going on. We have jobs. Many of our wives have jobs. We have children. We have tirdis. We have tirdis apanosa. We have all kinds of things. You know, in Tefillah Zaka, we come to the Rebbeinu Shalom and we start off and we tell him, you know, you gave us a neshama, you gave us a guf, I checked every aver in my body, and Lamaisa, ain bi misayim. I have nothing. Not my head, not my feet, not my legs, not my hands, everything, all averis. And then there's one paragraph where we give the Rebbeinu Shalom an excuse. Taka. If you're sitting there, Erev Kippur, by Tefillah Zaka, with your talis and your kittel, and you're giving an excuse, it better be a good one. And you say, Rebbeinu Shalom, the tirdis parnosa, tzagi d'lbonim. You lay it out there. It's taka. It's an excuse. And a lot of times, we tie in these excuses for reasons why our shalom bayis is not what we want it to be, and not what it could be. And it's valid. Abba l'maisa. How much time do we ever stop and focus on trying to make our shalom bayis better or be what it could be? Unfortunately, very little. You know, sometimes we have to ask a question. Many of us working from offices, I presume everyone here's office is run ala toyev ala avoda. People have secretaries. Many people spend more wake hours in the office with their secretary than they do with their spouse at home. But you ever ask yourself a question? What is the difference between the yachas that I have with my secretary versus the yachas that I have with my wife at home? Well, my secretary is kosher. I'm good. But what's the difference between that and the yachas that I have at home? And there are many people who, if we would be honest with ourselves, we struggle to answer this question. And in many homes, they'll say that they have very good shalom bayis. But when you really analyze the yachas between a husband and a wife, he's the CFO, she's the CEO. They have many business meetings by supper. You know, Yankel's Manal called today, and we don't have enough money, and we have to cut spending. A lot of very nice conversations, very cordial. But you can have those conversations in the office, and there's nothing wrong with it. So, taka, what is my marriage? And the teretz is that when we don't put effort into a marriage, when we don't focus on being machshav our spouse, sharing feelings with our spouse, spending just a few minutes when we walked out the door and we knew our wife was taking our child to an appointment, to spend a few minutes to even pick up our phone and send a text message or a WhatsApp, whatever it is. Did it go okay? To show a care and to show an interest, to be there for the other person emotionally. How long does it take? Not very long. But it comes down to the same yesod. We're busy. We have focus. What's our focus? We need to rub shoulders with the sarim. We need to have a status that the Hamayim could look at us and see us as great people. And that is all encompassing. And our entire life revolves around just that one thing. I once was sitting with a woman, and I asked her, Shalom Bayis was not good. I said, tell me positive things about your marriage. She said, a small plastic card. That's the positive about my marriage. It's a very powerful tool, Gada. But how many of us are guilty of the same thing? I go to work, Tomei Tova. If you need more cleaning help, just go get it. If you can't make supper one night, please go buy it. And please leave me alone. The noisi ba'oilim chaveroi. It's the small things. Many times people feel we're dealing with nisyonis. We're dealing with tzargi d'banim. We're dealing with finances that are not 100% in order. It's our spouse's fault, but l'maisa. And the question is, Shalom Bayis, how? One of the biggest yisodos we have to learn as we grow. You speak to yeshiva bacher. If you ever sit down with a yeshiva bacher and you get him to really open up to how he thinks. So there's a mahalach. Litvish yeshiva bacher. Chassidim missed the boat. Chabad, whatever he considers them. Sfardim, they're down another level. They sound crazy. He has a few Litvish Bachrim over there. There's one yeshiva, they learn Pashat and Amid more Zman than he does. So it's really Dirshu, it's just, it's repackaged that it could be in a yeshiva. If it's an Amid less, they're going to be Amiratzim for the rest of their lives. Right? Speak to yeshiva Bachar, Pachas Yosef, this is what you get. You know what the yesod is of a young person? There's a box that's about this big, and it's called Namal. Be'etzem, anyone out of that box, anyone who's slightly different than me, for those of you who grew up in Brooklyn will know what I'm talking about, belong in Bellevue, right? But Bellevue only has a certain amount of beds. That's the big mental institution in New York City. They only have a certain amount of beds. So Pashut, they ration their beds for everybody else, and the Olam manages. We all grew up Pachas Yosef with this Yesod. And we get married. And the bottom line is our wives don't fit into that box. And there's many disagreements that we have. And there's something that we have to learn in life. And that is that just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean it's personal. You can have two people who love a child just the same and have two different ways on how to deal with that child, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the aleph base, to be able to be makah that, is to be able to stop and sometimes to think, what is my wife saying? Why does she think the way she does? And maybe Eina Chanami, she has a point. I may also have a point, and my point is probably better than hers, Mustama. But can we learn to agree? Can we learn to disagree without getting it personal? And if you could do that, people who have an ability in a marriage to be able to hear Tut Stadim without letting it get personal, have an ability to be able to accomplish Moedik Azachim. It's a tremendous opening to accomplishment. But it requires sometimes thought, and most important, it requires maturity. And the problem is, when we're busy with what we're busy with, we don't stop to think about Chinuch Habonim, we don't stop to think about our Ruchnias, and we don't stop to think about our Shalom Bayis. And because of that, there's so much that we just coast through, so much aggravation, so much loss. Think about it. Where was I holding when I left yeshiva? And how much did I let slip away? How did it happen? Because I didn't think about it. It's not too late. Our if there was one thing we could walk away from tonight, I need time to think. Those of you who commute, there's nothing like a few minutes in the car, you shut your phone, just push it, stop and think. My child, he's struggling in yeshiva. Why? What could I do for him? How could I help him? My wife, she's down these days. What could I do to be mechazik the matziv? My children, are they seeing what I want them to see? Am I there for them? Once we stop and think, it's 90% of the job. Taka, we should be zoicha. Going into Yontif of Chanukah, Yontif of Or. Farshim talk about the ability of Chanukah, Or to be madche the choshech. One of the biggest choshechs of the American Golos is our inability to focus, our inability to think, our inability to stop. We're too busy, we don't have the time. Taka don't have the time. But if we make it a priority, we can taka be zoicha. Once we stop and think, our whole lives, our shalom bayis, our ruchnius, our chinuch habanim could all change. Taka be zoicha to have the siyata d'shmaya that we need.
And I think you mentioned before that we're going to do a little different tonight. It's open Q&A. If anybody has anything they want to ask, feel free. And just stand up and ask, or sit and ask.
The question that came in once previously, but the Rav mentioned the topic regarding chayes to chinuch, to the children in the house, how to see a father. So we want to ask you that what's the proper role for a father, a husband to a wife when it comes to ruchnius? The father's coming into the home as two partners. The children see both the father and the mother, and sometimes the hashkafas could be a little bit different. Could evolve over time. What's the proper role with a father when he's coming to try to show back a certain tzura in his house?
So I think this brings up a very large and broad topic. The Metzias is, and where we're holding today in Tavshin Pei Hey, we as men have many avenues in which we're able to be mechazik our ruchnis. Baruch Hashem, most of us are part of shuls that have rabbanim. Whether we like it or not, they speak. And whether we like it or not, things go in. And whether we accept it at the time or not, it has ashpah on us. Baruch Hashem, it's very in style today in Lakewood that everyone needs to have at least some sort of Seder Halimut. And there's no question, Torah has an ability to be Megan a Matzli. It helps people, it helps us grow. And the problem is that for many of our wives, some and all of these avenues are non-existent. And unfortunately, and I'm not going to give a technology schmooze over here, but in Poshet Metzias, many women have exposure to many things that they didn't have in the past. So if you have a woman who has Amazon Prime, and part of her Amazon Prime membership is Amazon Video, and she has 120 television channels, which, by the way, you can only watch Thursday Night Football on Amazon Video. So, vice the chais, it must be television. So, we very often get ourselves into situations where our wives are getting a whole set of ashpayos that we are either yes or not part of. But even if we are to a certain extent part of it, unfortunately, we at least have where to go to get our ruchnius, and they don't. And again, going back to putting some thought into this, if we're not going to focus somehow on where our wives are holding, it's not a kasha where after 4 or 5 years we find ourselves on 2 different pages. And to a certain extent, the solution is not always as easy as discussing the problem, but step number 1 is to be makir that this is a real issue and this is a real problem. And there's a lot of hashkafas and hashpayas that are coming in from what people are watching, from, unfortunately, the Yetzer Hara on television is far from one, and this is definitely leading to a big merchak between many husbands and many wives, where many husbands are being yonik from many places of ruchnius, and their wives who are doing it innocently because lamaisa, after the kids go to sleep, I just need something. Slowly but surely, their ruchnius and their hashkafas are eroding to the point where we definitely see a very big merchak sometimes between husbands and wives. And this is something that's not always easy to address, but it's something that a husband needs to be aware of and needs to watch.
What happens if there is some daylight between the husband and the wife? Is it important the kids shouldn't see that?
So it's never kedai that children should see, sort of daylight between husband and wife in really anything. Disagreeing in front of the children is something that's never a good idea, even if it's about mundane things, or whether or not we should go to the amusement park or the zoo on Chol Hamoed. As a general rule, the better that children are able to see from parents a unified front, the more secure children feel, and the better it is for their own marriages, when they get married. Having said that, you can fool everybody, but you can't fool your own bnei bayis, which means that ultimately, if the father's living in one world and the mother's living in a different world, children will see that and pick it up. And more often than not, being that the mother is the one that's raising the children on a consistent basis, you can get yourself in a situation, and unfortunately many homes it works like this, just don't let Tati see. And then the husband is on his own island, and there's a lot of things going on in his house that he would rather not. But it's definitely an issue, and it comes back to shalom bayis and respect, and really, if things are healthy and things are good, a woman who feels cared for and respected by her husband will in turn want to raise their children in the vision that her husband has.
So what's talking needs? The women talk what they have jobs, there's plenty of kids, they need to space out a little bit of it.
So it's difficult.
Where do they go from there?
So I don't think there's one answer to every person. I think saying that you should have your wife listen to shiurim is a very good idea for some and a very bad idea for others. There are people that are more, scholastic, more deep thinkers, and taka appreciate shiurim. There are other women that are phenomenal mothers and made horrible students, and telling them to learn is bringing up a lot of PTSD. It's something that has to be spoken about and really work, but really something that people need to focus on. Your wife needs to feel that she has ruchnius from somewhere.
Totally different question. If most of a person's learning and davening takes place out of the house, what's any practical ways to imbue your children with what's important to you? It's not something they can see most of the time. You're going to have a seder outside, you're going to go daven. How do you bring that home with you?
So I think ultimately what you speak about and what's important to you is something that goes over to the children. They say the Velt says over that why do we say the 10 sons of Rav Papa by Siyum, because Rav Papa had 10 Chashiva children because he was makbid to make a Siyum every single time he finished the Masechta. Now, at the end of the day, a mashal that I've used a few times, did you ever stop and think about what your 12-year-old daughter thinks about Shavuos night learning? Think about what most fathers say over in the house around Shavuos night. I hope I'm going to be able to make it. I'm too tired. I don't know what's going to be. You come the next day, you're like, I was falling asleep. Did you say one word about the fight that you had with your chavusa? So, what do you expect your 12-year-old daughter to think? She slept through the whole thing. She didn't hear one positive word about anything. So the answer is, Shavuos night is a disaster. So when she gets married, and her husband's like, nah, I'm from the guy, 1 o'clock is good enough for me, Anyway, I learn more, or whatever. Okay, fine, say that. Right? There's no chashivas to Shavuos night. There's no chashivas to anything. We have to figure out ways to make things chashuv. When you get a new car, your kid knows that that's chashuv. When your kid knows that certain things are chashuv. Are you busy with davening? When you're away, I have to catch mincha. There's one shayla whether you're mechuyev to daven mincha with the minyan when you're on vacation. We can have a discussion about it. Litvish, good. But then comes another question. It's vacation now. You don't need a minyan. Okay, say that. What is the minyan? How chashuv is it? So when we're mindful, yes, there's a certain amount of them seeing and being able to see a father sit and learn sometimes. But when a child knows that if Tati's sleeping Shabbos afternoon, at 3 o'clock he has to be up because he has a kavusa, no matter what, make sure it has hashva. She knows that you have to be up to work. That she knows. She knows that you're not going to miss a flight. So where's the chashivas? So we have a lot of opportunities to be able to show chashivas, but we have to sometimes make an effort to be able to do that. For example, siyumim, person finishes a masechta. There should be some sort of acknowledgement that it happened. That doesn't mean that you have to schlep in all your neighbors for a minyan. But if you sit down and you say, okay, we're having a special supper tonight, we're buying out, whatever, Tati finished the Masechta, Tati this, Tati that. There's a chashivas to what happened, it's chashuv. But if a lot of times we're very busy not self-promotion, especially when it comes to our ruchnias. When it comes to gashmis, we don't mind, but when it comes to ruchnias, we become, our anivus sets in, and then Mela, our children never see the chashivas of our ruchnias. They don't see it's important to us. So Memela, its taka becomes very hard.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.